Welcome and hello. My name is Joe Griffiths, Director of Planning Best Practices for the Maryland Department of Planning. Welcome to the next webinar in the Maryland Department of Transportation's MDOT in Motion webinar series. Today's webinar is presented in celebration of Bike Month. MDP is joined by our colleagues at MDOT and an expert panel that will share examples and resources that facilitate multimodal commutes. Next slide, please. Today's webinar is eligible for 1.5 AICP credits. The CM number is on the screen. You can log your credits on your AICP credit maintenance dashboard on the American Planning Association website. We will also send a completion certificate to all attendees. You will receive it from the email on the screen, certs@gutenbergcerts.com. We've heard recently about concerns about audio echo, and audio echo occurs when you have two Zoom windows open. So if you experience audio echo, try removing or try closing one of those windows. Attendees have been muted, but you can ask questions in the Q&A. You'll have to go to likely have to go to the More section or the More button and add Q&A to your toolbar, and then you can pin it. We will reserve most questions for the end, but panelists will also try to answer some questions in the Q&A panel. Please use the Q&A function and not the chat function to ask questions. The chat should be reserved for sharing resources with one another and enriching the learning environment. If you put your question in the chat, it's going to continue to scroll up the screen as other questions are asked, and we will not be able to access it later. This session will be recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please leave before the recording begins. And the recording will be made available within 2 weeks on the OATM newsletter and event archive website. Next slide. On April 8th, 2025, Governor Moore signed Maryland's new Sustainable Growth Planning Principles into law, which replaced the previous 12 visions. To aid state and local application of the new planning principles, last December, the Sustainable Growth Subcabinet published the Sustainable Growth Implementation Guide, linked on this slide, which describes each principle, the benefits of incorporating the principles into local and state planning, key performance indicators Maryland will use to measure progress, case examples of the principles in action around the state, and resources for principles implementation. The implementation guide is organized by principle and is designed to emphasize Maryland's land use and development priorities while also allowing flexible application by various types of users. Next slide, please. Today's webinar will focus on the principles of transportation and economy, even though multimodalism applies to all the principles. The intent statements for each principle are shown on the screen. Both promote and are aided by multimodal travel and commuting choice. I will now turn it over to my MDOT colleague, Meg Young.
So much, Joe, for the introduction. Everybody, my name is Meg Young. I'm our Deputy Director of Active Transportation and Micromobility here at the Maryland Department of Transportation. We really thank the Maryland Department of Planning for helping us put on this webinar series. As Joe shared, with the Moore-Miller administration and leadership from the Maryland Department of Planning, here in Maryland, we stick to our principles and are thinking about how our work leads to a bright and sustainable future for Maryland. Of course, transportation speaks heavily to what we do here at the Maryland Department of Transportation as a planning principle. But as we go through the presentation and webinar today, and you think of your questions, I'd like to think about the intersection of transportation and economy as also a very important part of how we want to grow. Transportation, whether it's our journey to work or how we get around in our communities, affects the economy, how we visit local businesses, we spend our day, and how a business can grow by attracting employees, by supporting the way they get to work. So as we go through this, I encourage you all to think about these intersections because no one agency or one discipline can plan the future of the state by itself. It's really a system, and we all work together, and our Sustainable Growth Subcabinet is a really great example of how we're doing that in Maryland. So here at MDOT, we have this webinar series that, again, we put on with the Maryland Department of Transportation called MDOT in Motion, and this is Our series and educational umbrella includes both the webinars, our e-blast, as well as roundtable discussions and focused engagement to really highlight and engage Marylanders, educate them about multimodal transportation. We want everyone to know more about complete streets and how we are serious about safety. We deserve to be safe on all of our journeys, no matter how we choose to take them, and it's a shared responsibility on the road that is a combination of so many things, from engineering to education and providing a safe network across the state. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to our websites at mdot.maryland.gov/bikeped to join the Office of Active Transportation mailing list. You can also scan this QR code to give us feedback about the webinar today or request to be added to our mailing list. You can also learn more about safety on our website, which is our guiding principle here at MDOT. But now to get to today's content, our agenda is on the screen. Today, I will kick us off talking about biking because it is Bike Month. We have some tips for commuting by bike, some history about Bike Month, and some fun facts for you. Then we'll get into commuting. Nikki Trasmonte from Commuter Choice Maryland will share about their program and incentives, about how workplaces can take advantages and how employees themselves can sign up for different incentives they offer. And then last but certainly not least, we have a panel today of workplaces, employers, and employees that are really going the extra mile to support how people travel to work. And they have some tips as well to really put this into practice. We will save questions for after all of these presentations and the panel, but if something pops up while someone is speaking, you can put it in the Q&A. If it's a simple answer, we will try to answer it right there on the spot. But if it's something that everyone would benefit hearing from, we'll save it till that Q&A section so we can answer it out loud and everyone can hear the answer. Right, and then our panels today, again, myself, Meg Young, I'm our Deputy Director of Active Transportation and Micromobility. Nikki Trasmonte is our Transportation Demand Management Coordinator for Commuter Choice Maryland. And our workplace panel includes 3 workplaces kind of scattered throughout Maryland, different principals, different locations, so it can give you a good variety of perspectives. The American Society of Health System Pharmacists is in Bethesda, Maryland. The Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab in Laurel, Maryland, and then Thermo Fisher Scientific in Frederick. I know we also have a lot of support for Bike Month here at MDOT, even all the way up to our secretary and our Assistant Secretary, Joe McAndrew, wanted to give a warm welcome to everyone. He's a very enthusiastic cyclist himself, but I think we might be having some technical issues, so he might make an appearance later on. But he was very excited to wish everyone a happy Bike Month. All right, so let's hop into Bike Month and how we're celebrating in Maryland. First and foremost, we are investing in safe facilities here at MDOT. We passed a new complete streets policy in 2024, which mandates that any time that we initiate a project in our right-of-way on our land on state roads or across the state, we have to look at adding safe facilities for people walking and biking. As a result, our consolidated transportation program that was approved by the state budget this year included our largest investment on record in active transportation projects. That is $540 million for constructing new sidewalks and bike facilities, implementing ADA improvements, as well as awarding state and federal funds to local jurisdictions that have projects important to their communities, and $198 million specifically for our vulnerable roadway user programs that are using crash data to identify the most dangerous locations on our road network and take action to make them safer. So we're very proud of this work. At MDOT, we have a couple of different blogs out there if you want to read more about how this was calculated or the progress that we're making to support safer networks for everyone. And when it comes to Bike Month, here's my first fun fact. Buckle up, I'll have some fun facts. Did you know that it was actually cyclists and not drivers that fought to pave roads in the US? You'll see on your screen a recruiting poster from the League of American Wheelmen who were pushing for the Good Roads movement. At the time, cycling was much more prevalent, and before cars became ubiquitous, it was cyclists that needed paved streets and to have a smooth commute to where they were going. So we can actually thank cyclists for the roadways we have today. So Bike Month then originated in 1955 from the League of American Bicyclists. It's celebrated nationally and is meant to bring attention to how biking can be used for transportation, recreation, and for our everyday well-being. If you go to bikeleague.org/bike month, they have a ton of great materials. Here on your screen, you'll see a bingo card, which I am currently playing with some of my friends. In Maryland, we've adopted Bike Month. It's a national celebration, but our governor, Wes Moore, issued a proclamation declaring May as Bike Month and listed a number of reasons why it's important to him and his administration. Biking can touch health and quality of life when you're doing it for recreation. It can spur tourism and economic impact when we go and travel the 1,300 miles of transportation trails we have across Maryland, including the C&O Trail and the Great Allegheny Passage, where people go and spend vacations and spend their tourism dollars. Biking can also have environmental benefits, lowering your carbon footprint as a more sustainable mode of transportation. And yeah, it can be both recreational and transportation in nature. So we really appreciate this support from Governor Moore. The two main Bike to Work Week celebrations across the states are the week of May 11th to May 15th, supported by Metro DC, as well as Central Maryland. So you can find events on both of their websites. There are events across the states. There are group rides, pit stops where you can stop, get information and giveaways, and celebrations throughout the week. So on your screen, you're seeing the Bike to Work Week, Bike to Work Day 2026 for Metro DC flyer. You can search by county on that website. And they also have a great map so you can see all of the different activities going on. The other celebration is in Central Maryland, spanning Anne Arundel, Baltimore City and County, Carroll County, Howard, Harford County, and Queen Anne's. And so there are, again, events throughout the week. On your screen, we have a number of events that MDOT has sponsored. This is important to us, or that we're hosting. Kicking it off on Monday, we're partnering with Baltimore City and the mayor for the press conference and mayor's bike ride. On Tuesday, we invite you to MDOT headquarters, where we will be not only having a pit stop to pick up some safety information, lights, and giveaways, but we will also be going on a group ride. I see somebody in the chat is planning to join us. That's great. We'll be riding the BWI Hiker Biker Trail, which is actually the only airport in the nation that has a hiker biker loop around it, a 12-mile loop where you can stop at different parks, observation parks, watch the planes, or just get in some miles if you're training. On the 13th, we're bringing Bike to Work Week to our MVA headquarters. So it's just as important that bicyclists are safe, but also that drivers know how to interact with bicyclists and understand new infrastructure. So that will be an education-focused pit stop at the MVA. And then last but not least, we know a lot of people combine biking with transit as a last mile option. And so at Baltimore's Penn Station, the MTA will be hosting an event on Thursday, showing people, how to bring your bike on transit and encouraging that combo, because when you combine the two, you can go a lot further. So bike to work week and bike month is a lot about fun, but again, for us at MDOT, we're serious about safety, and there's a reason why we are shining a light on biking and trying to bring more attention to it. Quite frankly, it's about safety and what we're seeing in crash data. So people walking and biking are what we consider to be vulnerable roadway users. That is because you don't have the steel of a car or a bus around you. You don't have a seatbelt holding you back. And quite frankly, if you got into a collision with a car, you would lose. Our strategic highway safety plan identifies pedestrians and bicyclists as an emphasis area that we have to approach through the safe systems approach. We were proud in the latest release of crash data and the highway safety plan that the fatal crashes in the state of Maryland went down pretty drastically in 2025. We'd like to think that is the work of our safe systems approach and the emphasis we've been putting on complete streets projects, but we still have a lot of progress to make to bring this number lower, and ultimately our goal is vision zero, to see zero serious injuries or fatalities on our roadway network. So the safe systems approach that we are using to lower the number of crashes on our state highways really emphasizes that humans are people, we make mistakes, and we need to have redundant strategies that all work together to approach this problem. This is data-driven and a framework that USDOT recommends we follow. So not only do we need to engineer safe roads, but we need to educate people how to be on them safely. We need to have safe post-crash care, have safe vehicles, and safe speeds at the end of the day. Only by using all of these tactics can we bring roadway deaths to zero. In the chat, you'll see from our Maryland Highway Safety Office, who are the champions of our strategic highway safety plan. We have a dashboard about fatal crash data that you can also explore on your own at zerodeathsmd.gov. So again, back to bicyclists being vulnerable roadway users. I mentioned we don't have all of the protections that somebody in a car or riding in a bus might have, but also at the end of the day, it is speed that is the factor that most determines what will happen if a crash unfortunately occurs. This is the way our bodies are designed. At 20 miles per hour, you can absorb some impact. Only 10% of people who are involved in a crash going 20 miles per hour end up with a fatality or a severe injury. Of course, that's not great. We don't want 1 in 10 people to suffer like that. But when we look at how that increases exponentially with speed, we can really see the importance that 20 is plenty, because at 30 miles per hour, it goes up to a 40% likelihood of fatality or severe injury. And when you get to 40 miles per hour, which is the speed that many people drive on our arterials, if you're driving that fast and hit somebody walking or biking, there is an 80% chance that that person will die or be severely injured. Their life will be changed forever. So yes, they are 8 times more likely to die than somebody who is struck at only 20 miles per hour. So this underscores why our effort to slow speeds and reduce conflicts is so important, and why people walking and biking are so overly represented in our crash data. As I mentioned, though, this is a shared responsibility. We all share the road. And bicyclists cannot control the speed that somebody driving next to them is driving. You can control your speed when you're driving, but when you're biking, you can't touch their gas pedal. So I want to go over today 3 of the things that are within your control that you can do to make it safer for yourself. Again, it's a shared responsibility, but we all need to do our part. And I'm bringing you this information as a certified league cycle instructor. I have certification from the League of American Bicyclists to teach bike safety. I encourage everybody to check out the League of American Bicyclists. They do have a lot of great educational information, places where you can join a class, and even contacts for local league cycle instructors in your area. It's really a great certification that teaches you how to teach people. So the 3 elements that you can always go back to for safe biking is that you need to have safe equipment, a safe bike, you need to pick a safe route, and then you need to know how to behave safely on the road. If you master those 3 things, then you can do everything within your power to have a safe ride. So what does this look like? For a safe bike, first of all, when you're buying a bike, pick one that fits your needs, geometry, handlebars, any adaptive needs that you have. If you're buying an e-bike, we really want to make sure that you are buying a road legal e-bike. There are 3 classes of e-bikes, class 1 to 3. And then there are other bikes which are currently being advertised as e-bikes, especially online, that actually don't meet these qualifications. And we would consider what's called an e-moto in Maryland. So when you are buying an e-bike, we really encourage you to go in person to a bike shop where you can be sure that that vehicle has a class 1 through 3 sticker and that you will have a place that can safely maintain your bike. If you buy an e-bike online, many bike shops will not touch it. They will not help you repair it. And that really speaks to what is being sold online. If even a bike shop says, oof, sorry, we have a liability if we fix this bike. So we're seeing a lot of issues with this, with bikes that are really quite powerful, but aren't meeting the standards for then perhaps the type of brakes that need to be associated with such a powerful motor. So always look for those stickers. And then once you have your bike and it's one that you're comfortable with, the best thing you can do at home to check for your bike safety is just a quick ABC check. A stands for air, that your tires are properly inflated. If a bike is underinflated, it is more likely to kind of skid out underneath of you when you're turning. B stands for brakes. You always want to make sure your brakes are properly engaging. It's your number 1 safety tool. Cars coming near you, the best thing you can do is stop. So you should always engage your brakes, squeeze them, make sure they work, and are going to be able to stop you. And then C is your chain and crank. Quite simply, is everything working properly. You pick up your bike and spin the pedal around, make sure that the chain is on there and running smoothly. The quick check, you can check that any quick releases are properly in place. And this seems rudimentary, but if you put your bike on the back of a car, if you put it on the front of a bus, things can kind of get jostled around. And so it's a really quick check, takes like 30 seconds to do, and then you're going to be good to go. Anything more than that, we do recommend you go to a bike shop for an annual tune-up. Again, underscoring this tip about e-bikes, look for a certification sticker. The battery should have a UL sticker, like the one on the screen with a red circle, so you have a certified battery that can be safely charged. The bike should be classified as a class 1, 2, or 3 e-bike. If it does not have a sticker in Maryland, it is not a legal vehicle. So e-bikes and e-motos sometimes can look really similar, but there's differences in especially this motor section, how powerful the motor is. And if it is a class 1 through 3 e-bike, you can ride it mostly like a regular bicycle and follow regular bicycle rules. But if it did not meet that classification, you would be required to have a license, a registration, and insurance because it is a more powerful vehicle. We'll be really diving into this aspect in our next webinar on May 21st. So if you have questions about micromobility, really encourage you to join that webinar. Once you have a safe bike, you have to pick a safe route. We've made huge advancements in online maps and mapping applications. Most of them have a little layer you can turn on. Here on your screen is 2 screenshots of Google Maps. And if you go to this little box in the corner, it looks like a stack of boxes. Those are layers you can turn on, and you can turn on bike routes. The thing is, you should always question it. It will tell you to go one way, and at the end of the day, you should still use some local knowledge and make sure that is the best route for you. Sometimes the shortest route is not the safest. It might be safer to go through a neighborhood that has little traffic than going on a bike lane on a busy street if it's not protected. Luckily, people who bike love to talk about biking. So if you have a local Facebook group or bike advocacy organization, you should ask them. I guarantee you say, I'm going from here to here, you'll get so many comments of people saying, oh, go this way, not this way. If you go here, people are parked there. And there's a lot of day-to-day experience that bikers are more than willing to join to help someone else give it a try. So if you're doing this for the first time, my best advice is to give yourself some time not to do it when you're stressed and test out that route when you're not rushing to work. One other thing about a safe route and when you've mapped it out, a little tip here is that sometimes it's hard to make a left-hand turn as a bike. You can see on here, you're traveling on the right-hand lane as a bike, and purple, the arrows that are slowly cutting across all the lanes of traffic, is what we're kind of tempted to do. That's what if you were driving, you would slowly merge left to make your left-hand turn. However, a trick if you bike a lot is to do a 2-stage turn. And rather than immediately or trying to merge all the way over, you stay to the right and actually go further to the right until you get to the intersection where you are making a left-hand turn. And then you simply adjust, you wait for the light until you have a green going in that direction. So it turns into almost like a sweeping left turn, but it allows you to not cut across traffic, stay all the way to the right, and then be in the right-hand lane again on your next leg of your journey. So speaking of safe riding, you need to be seen and be predictable as somebody biking. Again, if you get into a crash with a car, you're going to lose. So you need cars to understand where you're moving and to be able to anticipate what you're doing. As much as you need to keep your eyes on the cars, you need to know that a car can see you and that they can see and predict what you're doing so they can react appropriately. At the end of the day, that means following the rules of the road. If you don't know, but you have a driver's license, you should probably kind of default to what the rules of the road are for driving as well. It's not totally different. You should use your turn signals, and on the screen is a simple illustration of bike hand signals. Wearing bright colors and being sure you have your lights at night is another way to be seen. Being predictable means riding in a straight line. It's tempting sometimes to really hug all the way to the right-hand side of the lane. And if there's parking, some people will go in and out of parked cars so that they can get further to the right. But when you do this, you're actually creating a zigzag. And so if you've gone to the right, you're going to have to come back out around the next parked car. You're looking over your shoulder. It's actually harder to keep track of what is going on with cars and for a car to expect you to know where you are going. It's also important as a bike rider to yield to people walking. People walking at intersections on shared use paths always have the right of way. When you're biking, you can be as scary to somebody walking as a car is to you. You are the bigger, faster vehicle in that case. So you need to let people know when you're approaching. You need to say things like, hey, I'm passing on your left, because they might not hear you coming. So using your voice and communicating what is going on is very important. Especially if you're riding in a group with other bikes, you let them know when you're turning or when you're avoiding an obstacle in the road. My last tip for this is that when you're biking is to avoid the door zone. I mentioned how going in and out of the parking lane does not add to safety. And similarly, when there are parked cars, you need to look at where they are parked and not ride too close to them, because if somebody opens a door, it might be right in your lane of travel. All right, so we know how to be safe. A few quick tips. I'm going to go over these very quickly if you are trying to bike to work. We'll have some bike commuters speaking to their commutes. So again, I won't go too into detail here, but these slides will be posted on our website. Basically, you can wear whatever you want. You should try it on your bike first. A chain guard, which is what's pictured here, can keep your pants from getting in your chain of your bike. And bright colors, again, always recommended for when you're biking so people can see you. Carrying your stuff to work is another big concern. Backpacks and bags can actually be purchased using some commuter incentives. I was able to get a waterproof bag at my last job because I was traveling with my laptop. So waterproof bags and leak-proof containers are really important for when you're traveling and keeping your stuff all secure. Consider being multimodal. Combining your bike ride with transit can help you go further. Bike shares as well are a great option. Personally, I bike to the train station and then I take the train. MTA and WMATA both have information about how to bring your bikes on the bus or on the train. Once you get to where you're going, lock up your bike. Pictured here are some bike lockers, which are for long-term storage of bike to keep them out of the weather. But you can always ask your workplace, do we have bike racks? Could we install them? Can I bring my bike inside? And so again, I'll leave the rest of the commuting tip to some of our commuters, but if you want to know more about how to get involved with MDOT's biking initiatives and resources, a few places to start. We have quarterly meetings of the Maryland Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. We lay out all of our plans for the future in our 2050 Bicycle Master Plan and our statewide Transportation Trails Plan. And then we have a bunch of educational materials through the Maryland Highway Safety Office's Bike Smart program, as well as Safe Routes to Schools. We're currently working on more micromobility guidance. There's some up now, but again, join in on May 21st if you really want to know more about safety for e-bikes and e-scooters and the like. We also provide funding for bike safety through the Kim Lanfear's Bikeways Network program. That is for government entities, but nonprofits are also eligible if they have a letter from the right-of-way owner. The Bicycle Retrofit Fund accepts requests in coordination with local government if there is a state highway that currently doesn't have a bike facility. The Transportation Alternatives Program, which includes Safe Routes to Schools and the Recreational Trails Program, open up annually. That is federal funding that comes through MDOT and can be used by local governments, or rec trails can also go to nonprofits. And then the Maryland Highway Safety Office, which we've mentioned, has safety grants that are for education and behavioral change. That is an annual application. You can, if you have a nonprofit or a group, you can get funding for things like bike lights, bike helmets, and education through their safety grants. So I will take questions at the end, but I'm about to hand it off to Nikki, and I leave you all with one call to action. The National Household Travel Survey says that 52% of all car trips are less than 3 miles. 28% are less than 1 mile. So if you are taking a short trip this month, I encourage you to see, can you bike it or can you walk it? You might not be able to do your whole journey to work on a bike, but if there's one trip that you can substitute a single trip to not be taken in a car, we encourage you to try it this month while the weather is great and everybody is out biking. And I'll hand it over to you, Nikki.
Thank you, Meg, for that great overview. And I'll be sharing on our Commuter Choice Maryland program. Like Meg said, I am the TDM coordinator for MDOT's Commuter Choice Maryland program. So next slide, please. So our program is a statewide free program. It was relaunched in 2018. Our goal is to shift a significant share of single occupancy vehicle drivers or people driving alone to other modes of transportation. So, like Meg said, we encourage active transportation as well as carpooling, van pooling, increasing the use of teleworking, and alternative work schedules. We also work with employers to set up commuter benefits, receive incentives and recognition, all for free. We also provide information to encourage the public to use better commuting options other than driving alone. And lastly, we also manage statewide commuter programs. So if you want to go to the next slide, just to give everyone some context on the work that we do, commuting for everyone is universal. It's daily, and a lot of people have, with the mandates to back to work, a lot of people are commuting daily, and it can be costly. When you add in congestion and environmental impacts, costs grow even more, and eventually some people get tired of enough of their commute. Employers can also face the cost of employee turnover. So one of the statistics that we wanted to highlight in the state of Maryland is that Maryland ranks number two in the longest work commutes in the US. So essentially, it is a problem in our state, and we're working towards a solution for that. So if you want to go to the next slide. We want to give more context on kind of why it matters. Many of you know who are on the webinar today with the FSK bridge collapse that happened. A lot of us have a new normal for commuting with an increased travel time of up to 20 to 30 minutes sometimes. With that, this has led to more stress and even with the rise of the cost of fuel as well. So this is kind of why we do the work that we do. We really want to encourage commuters to use other modes of transportation or try a new mode to get to work. So the next slide, please. So this is a quick snapshot and overview of the different free resources and programs that we have for commuters. I just want to point out that first bullet with the title, Find Out About Your Options. Um, on our website, baltimorecommutes.org, you can sign up for a free commuter connections account, or you can sign up for our different programs. So one program is our Guaranteed Ride Home program, which I'll share about shortly. We also have a ride matching database. So this is where commuters who want to share a ride with different commuters in the region can sign up for a van pool, carpool, or both. And lastly, we have a newer program called our Ride Together Rewards program. It is a program which is designed to support transit, van pool, and carpool in the greater Baltimore region. So it's a way for us to really incentivize and support commuters to take advantage of those programs. Another call I wanted to mention is our new Charm Pass program. If you've never used Charm Pass before and you have access to an MTA station, this is a great incentive to try, and you can receive free transit passes. So all of our programs and more information is going to be listed on our commuterchoicemaryland.com website. So if you want to go to the next slide. So, like Meg said, she went over many biking tips and a background on Bike Month and some initiatives taking place, especially for MDOT. So, just to give everyone background on active transportation, many people think active transportation is just biking. It also involves any form of commute that involves physical activity. So, walking, running, biking, or using public transportation. So it has a lot of benefits. Like Meg said, it can boost your health and wellness, leading to improved moods and productivity for people. I know for myself, whenever I walk to work or do a combination of biking, honestly, I get a workout in and everything like that. So it can really lead to overall better health and wellness. As well as that, for any employers who are interested in promoting active commuting, you can support your staff through bike memberships, gear, and bicycle maintenance. And then just a call out, MDOT has an interactive bicycle level of traffic stress map. So it's a way to find bike routes anywhere in Maryland. Next slide, please. So, on top of active transportation, you can actually pair that with a great commute program that we have called Guaranteed Ride Home. It gives individuals who take active transportation or carpool, vanpool to work 6 free emergency rides home per year. So it's a great way for people to take these modes and change their mode to work other than driving alone because maybe they drive because of the what if. So what if my child gets sick or what if I get stuck working overtime? So this is a great solution to that. So if you're interested in signing up, you can make an account through our Commuter Connections website. So next slide, please. So we also have commuter cash. So this is a great way for you to log your trips. So if you're biking to work, for example, you can log that trip to work. You can earn points and redeem rewards. So commuters can receive actually up to $600 per calendar year in the state of Maryland to participate. So if you're interested in this, you can sign up. You should log your trips and you can earn rewards. Next slide, please. So we want to highlight some of our program impacts from the last year. So we ended the year with the following stats. So a few notable ones that I wanted to call out. We helped over 14,000 people shift to a clean commute. We also provided 221 transit incentives. For that guaranteed ride home program, the program that gives emergency rides home, we had over 583 rides provided, as well as for the Commuter Cash app, we had 1,827 registrations for the app. So as you can see, our program is growing. We're really excited to continue to evolve it and see our impacts for this year. So next slide, please. So like Mike mentioned, our team is really excited to support Bike to Work Month, and we have a lot of events coming up. We have one on May 11th, which is that Bike to Work Baltimore City Hall pit stop. We're also supporting the May 12th event at MDOT's TSO office. And we also have another event on May 13th, which is going to be at the Convention Center in Baltimore. So it's a great way for us to take part in Bike to Work Month and celebrate that. So if you're in the region, please feel free to join as well. And next slide, please. So we also have a free employer partner program that I want to mention for any employers on the call in the state of Maryland. It's a way we can help you get started on expanding your commuter benefits program at your work site. So if you're interested in doing that, we can help you with program evaluation. For example, if you want to implement a new commuter benefit at your work site, we can help you with that. We can also help with marketing assistance, right? So we can help educate your staff. We can help create flyers to really show them about these great incentives that exist. So if you're interested, you can contact us. You can also save as well as a business. So it's a great way to take part in active transportation and promoting commuter benefits. So next slide, please. So a little bit more about our program. So if you're an employer on our webinar and you're interested in signing up for Employer Partner Program, it is free. You can email us at our commuter choice email address. And any commuters on the call who are in Maryland and want to learn about new commuting options, maybe around active transportation or even any new incentives that we have going on, please feel free to subscribe to our social media channels and our newsletter as well. So thank you. And then now I'm really excited to announce that we actually have a panel of different Commuter Choice Maryland champions who utilize active transportation to get to work or have policies in place to really support active transportation at their employer sites. So first, I want to introduce Michelle Egan. She is the Chief Human Resources Officer and Vice President at the American Society of Health System Pharmacists. She works for an organization that supports hybrid schedules, offers transit benefits, provides access to bike paths, and promotes commuter-focused initiatives like Bike to Work Day and the Cool Commute photo contest. So Michelle, if you want to take it away.
Great. Thanks, Nikki. It's been some great information. Thanks to you and Meg for everything so far. But good afternoon, everyone. I'm really glad to be here today. And I'm here to talk to you from the HR perspective or the employer perspective of something that's really important to all of us, how we get to work. So I'm going to walk through some of the things we do at ASHP, just some tips and tricks that some of you may be able to implement, knowing that some are easier than others, and I recognize that now. But before I jump in, I just want to, kind of highlight as an employer, as someone who works in HR, I want to just highlight, I know that we all have a lot on our plates, especially those in HR, and the world has changed drastically in the last 5 years. So I feel like when I say, okay, you've got to now think about all these commuter benefits, it's adding to plates. But I recognize that. But so that's what I hope you can just take one or two things away today that might be helpful to your organization. So as I start to share, one thing that really stood out to me recently is I was doing some research. The conference board had a survey that said commuting is actually the second most important factor in job satisfaction behind the supervisor. So it may not feel that this is a weighty topic for employers or HR professionals, but the reality is the data shows that commuting is a very important part of our employees' journey. Obviously it is their journey, but part of their work experience. So something to think about as you develop your programs. So specifically at ASHP, the Association for Health System Pharmacists, and we're located here in Bethesda. So some of the things I'm going to talk about are Bethesda based. We've done a couple of things. One of the things that we did prior to COVID, which was a real popular benefit, was we actually paid for the annual bike share membership, allowing employees to have access to bikes. So it was a low cost. We didn't have all of our employees take part of it, but certainly some did, and they really enjoyed that. And secondly, this does seem easy and automatic, but it's not. Really making sure that you do have bike storage in your near or in your buildings is important, and that it's secure, right? Our employees aren't going to want to bike to work if they don't have somewhere to put their bikes. And I know that, when we bring them into our offices, if you're in a cubicle or open space, it gets to be a little difficult. So really working with your building management, or if you own your buildings, carving out that space, or maybe it's in your community, there's somewhere locally you can have bike storage. Other things at ASHP we've done, we have covered the cost of smart trips, so public transportation up to a certain allowance, which I know a lot of organizations do. And then, as we all love the flexible work schedules, right? While we love them for many different reasons, but the one reason that they can be good is that it does help decrease different times we are all on the road. So those flexible work schedules, whether you're coming in super early or later, depending on how your organization works, can be helpful. So I know these all cost money, and not everyone can do these things, but something that you can do that I think is easier is partner with your local transportation association. In Bethesda, we have an organization called Bethesda Transportation Solutions. And I know Maryland has many of these throughout the state. But this organization is a free nonprofit organization that really is focused on helping employers and commuters reduce traffic congestion. And they really do some fun things, and our employees have really gone behind some of the work they do. So with them, I know Nikki mentioned it, but this cool commuter photo contest, our staff love it, and it's kind of silly. And what I do is I put something up in our Teams chat, like, let's see who's got the cool commuter photo contests, and staff will take pictures and participate. And the best part is that they give out the prizes, so it doesn't cost me the money for the prizes, but they pay the prizes, and sometimes they're above my taxable limits. They don't even get taxed on them, so it's all good. And by far our favorite event that we do every year is the Bethesda Walk and Ride Challenge, where we try to rethink our routines besides driving. And our team really gets into this one. We've had, I think, up to 10 teams contribute. It's teams of 3 to 5. We do cover the entry fee for staff, and it's $10 per team usually. I don't know if that price may go up. But again, Bethesda Transportation Solutions does all of the infrastructure and the tracking with them and all the prizes. And so it's an easy way to kind of add something to your employee engagement around commuting. I just want to give a shout out. I know Nikki mentioned this, but that Guaranteed Ride Home is a great program, which I promote with our staff. In fact, one of our new staff members I went to last week and said, have you done this? Because I know she commutes every day, and I thought it was really important that she was part of it. And since it's May, I know Meg talked to you all about this, but we are strong supporters of Bike to Work Day. We have some people who love biking to work. Um, so we do all the things before, but really just highlighting in all our visuals around the office, we have Bike to Work Day as something people visually see. And last year we nominated one of our executive fellows who works for us, Alex Duarte, and he won the Golden Pedal Award with the Bethesda Transportation Solution. And we were really excited about that. It was fun. And the reason he won it was just because he committed to biking to work for his year here instead of being on other other modalities, and really gained a lot from that. Just a few other quick things that our partnership provides. One to me was really valuable. The red line closures, right? Like near us, we're having 3 red line closures coming up this year, which our staff are already saying, can we work from home remotely the whole time? And my answer is no. But here's the answers, right? So I'm able to give them information because that they provide that, which is really helpful. So beyond partnerships, a few other things we do is, we do have intentional work schedules. So we are just like other employer debating, what is the right hybrid remote mix for our work. So we will continue to debate that probably long beyond many of us work. But I will say that in the past 2 years, we have reduced, close to 1 million employee vehicle miles traveled, and we've calculated about 45,000 gallons of gasoline. So while there are drawbacks and positives to that whole debate around where we work and how we work, there is some good things that come from being at home. And lastly, I'll just talk a little bit about some of the work we've done in getting recognized. So we do submit and been named a finalist for the Commuter Connections Employer Awards Program, which is part of the Washington Council of Governments, and Bethesda is part of that. This part of Maryland, at least. I don't know if all of Maryland is. But there are award programs out there in many different ways. And what I would say to employers is it's not winning the award. That's nice. But, the process of kind of thinking about your program and putting together a nomination helps you kind of solidify the work you do and why you do it. So we're proud to kind of participate in that as well. So just to wrap up, just if you have commuters in your organization, I would recommend, focusing on that flexibility and how people get to work and when they get to work, your local partnerships, financial incentives if you have them, and then make it fun, right? Like be culturally, just reinforce culturally, sometimes be silly. They'll make fun of you and think you're goofy, but it's okay. They kind of like it sometimes. So with that said, Nikki, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for giving that great overview about like what you do at ASHP and all the different like commute challenges you have. So I'd like to introduce our next set of panelists, Kevin Cropper and Joseph Linden, are multimodal commuters who primarily bike to work at the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab and aim to encourage others to adopt active transportation modes into their commutes and daily routines. So if Kevin and Jojo, you want to take the
I
floor?
believe we're on mute and have video on.
Yes.
So I'm Jojo Linden. This is Kevin, and I think we should just say upfront that we're not representing the lab. We are employees of it, but that we are here as private citizens. Next slide. So some thoughts. We put together some thoughts for companies. Things that are important to have for people to bike to work is somewhere to put their bike rack. And then we also encourage people to go the extra mile for having a bike repair station. So if you have a spare patch kit near the bike racks, that goes a long way. It also gets hot in the summer, so if there's a place to shower, that is great. And there's also any other reasons that someone might want to shower in the middle of the day. And then e-bikes, and we'll circle back to this later, but it's important to acknowledge that e-bikes are bikes that you then just don't sweat as much and help you go longer distances. But they are the distinction between e-bikes and e-motos that was mentioned earlier is relevant. But treat e-bikes just as if they're regular bicycles. Don't add red tape for them. Bike buses is something that we've established at APL recently, and that's basically, we will schedule times where we can gather at various locations closer to where people work, and then bike to work as a group. So if you work at a bigger company and have people coming from various directions, it's very helpful for people who are newer to cycling, because it's more comfortable to ride as a group, you're safer, and all of that stuff. And I also want to emphasize that cycling to work requires less effort on the company to accommodate it. Parking spaces are expensive. Parking garages are expensive. So if you can reward your people who don't use those resources, please do. A quick shout out for shuttles. If you're somewhere where you can have a shuttle to a public transit route, that is excellent. And advocacy. A company is a collection of people, so the voice is, for better or for worse, is heard better by other groups trying to make a change. If this institution is trying to help people bike to work. So please support employees as they try to advocate for making their commute better. Next slide.
So for individuals, I know Meg already tapped onto some of these, but I always suggest lights even during the daytime. There was a question for, what are some of the challenges? I think that making sure that you're feeling safe is important. So a white light in the front, a red light in the back, probably blinking. You can get them helmet mounted. You can get them integrated with the helmet as well. You can get rechargeable ones now that are really pretty darn bright and do a great job of helping you be able to see and be seen in daylight and at night. Clothing, dress for the weather. So I know some people are like, hey, if it's not 50 degrees, I'm not biking, but I have biked down into the 20s. Just get, I have earmuffs in the 50s because my ears are one of the things that gets coldest, but a couple layers for a liner glove and a windbreaker glove, some layers on top, something that you can open up. The days when you bike in and it's 25 in the morning and 55 in the afternoon or 65 in the afternoon, you have to have a spot for putting some of those clothes for coming back home. And definitely bright colors when it's dark. I got a really cool jacket several years ago that's reflective and shows out pretty bright when it gets flashed by headlights. There was some discussion earlier on panniers or saddlebags. Depending on the bike you have, if you have just a regular bike rack in the back, you can often get one of those. On the days that I don't bike, I still use it as my carry bag, but it's got little hooks that go on the bike rack, and then it just carries everything back there, and so my back doesn't get all sweaty. Love that. Generally, rules to be aware of: know where you can bike and where you can't. Maryland allows you to bike on the sidewalk. In some places, there are exceptions for that, but sometimes that can be the only route, or at least a safer feeling route if there's not a bike lane that's separate. And then be responsible. Follow the rules. All right, you are out there. You are subject to the same rules as a vehicle, so you don't want to be that biker who just zooms right through the stoplight when all of the cars are going from the other direction. You need to go ahead and stop there. Be considerate on trying to give 3 feet back to the cars when you're coming up to a stoplight. If you're trying to move up to the front, which you're allowed to do, but if you're going to expect them to give you 3 feet as well, make sure they do that. If you're on the sidewalk or on a path, make sure you are considerate of walkers and others that you are supposed to yield to, since you are considered a vehicle. And get out and do it. Practice it at another time. Jojo, like he said, he set up bike bus situations for us here. I've been doing them with the school, where you get a bunch of people together, you all go, everyone's like, oh, this is so much fun. You're very visible. People start to learn it, and then they're like, hey, I can do this on my own. I don't necessarily have to go when there's not a bike bus organized. Last summer, we did the bike buses coming to work. The first time I ran one, I had 2 people who had never biked to work, one person who signed up for the bike bus and then bought a bike. She rides regularly to work now. In fact, she was leading pretty much the bike buses from that location this year. So you can just give people that little bit of encouragement, and somebody's going to catch on to, like, yes, this is awesome, I can do it. All right, next slide.
So we're going to close out with some thoughts for government. So building codes, lots of places have like parking minimums, but there's no minimums for any other sort of bike blocks. So and it's even sometimes an issue to convince them that it's okay to use it's okay to install bike racks. So I've run into that issue. So the government can help clear that red tape. That would be excellent. Don't overregulate e-bikes. We touched on this before, and Maryland does a good job of recognizing the 3-class system. Class 1 e-bikes in particular, these are pedal assisted, only go 20 miles an hour when the motor's active. These should be treated as normal bicycles. If you go outside of the class system, I completely agree. It's a motorcycle, treated as such. And then safe and complete streets. I want to emphasize that in addition to looking at making roads safe to bike on where possible, having a separate sort of network of bike paths. So Columbia is a great example of this, where there's lots of different bike paths around Columbia that are not the same routes as the roads. This is one example of grade separated routes, which is the gold standard here. You can also have just another level next to a road, but have it that is also great. And then as you sort of step down the tiers, you can have separated bike lanes that are just on the same level as the road, the same pavement, but just a dedicated bike lane. And then preferably with some form of barrier like flex post. And then you start to degrade from there. And lead by example. So have bike racks at all the public facilities around schools, libraries, community centers, office buildings. I went to a Howard County public meeting on a bike update where the facility that we were being hosted at did not have any bike racks. So a bunch of people were locking their bikes to like handicapped signs, park benches, stuff like that. So have accommodations for that. And if you can also make sure that people who want to bike and use the bus, there's a way for them to do that. The MARC train, I know, has some accommodations for that, but I've also heard of them running into issues there. And I believe that's our last slide.
Thank you, Jojo and Kevin, for that great overview of your experience as bike commuters. So now I'm going to turn it over to our next set of panelists, Shane Boucher, Susan Meslovic, and Jennifer McGuire of Thermo Fisher Scientific. Their organization promotes multimodal commuting and supports events such as Bike to Work Day. So I'll pass it off to you now.
Sure. Just to go ahead and say it for the record, my last name is Boucher. We didn't get a chance to go ahead and chat with each other. Go ahead and French. So anybody who's French speaking would know how to say that last name. So thank you for coming. I appreciate the introduction, and our panelists already learned from so much from the other people. If you can go to the first slide. So we are Frederick Cycling BRG, we call it, or a business resource group. We have support at our site to go ahead and encourage cycling. Next slide. We are a life technology company. Our mission is to go ahead and enable our customer to make the world a healthier and safer, cleaner And next slide. This is the mission of what our group is. It was all about getting outside, encouraging a healthy, fun lifestyle, whether at work or at home. And it's a wonderful opportunity for us to meet different coworkers. We're a multi-manufacturing site, and so we have the different business group that don't necessarily interact with each other. But when we get together for bicycling, it's a great way to go ahead and meet your coworkers. And more importantly, that we get outside and we really enjoy some of the Maryland trails that we really enjoy. Next slide. So we are a gold bicycle friendly business. This was a bit of a, I wouldn't say long path, but it's been a long time coming. We started off at the biking club in 2012, and it was just to go ahead and get out and bike. But we were finding that people wanted to go ahead and bike to work. They wanted to go ahead and do different type of trails. And so we started to build on top of that. And so we included the bike to work day. We have a group of people that will ride to from the MARC station to where the work site is. And that really helped to generate a lot of interest in the idea of biking to work. But also we did adventure cycling. So these were weekend long training, and we did a adventure 4 day adventure cycling trip on the C&O Canal path, towpath. And we had a lot of fun with it and really built a lot of wonderful relationship do that. And then we went ahead and stepped up the game and to becoming a silver bike-friendly business. And we started sponsoring and hosting becoming a corporate sponsor for a local bike charity bike ride called Tour de Frederick. And people really like these sexy uniforms there. So that really got a lot of people getting on board and saying, I want that sexy uniform. Please, how do I get it? Well, ride this event and you'll get one. And we also were very fortunate to have a executive sponsor that was willing to sponsor and pay for some bike share that were branded, and that helped us to reach the Gold Bicycle Friendly Business in 2020. And we have renewed it twice, and we're still continued to be a Gold Bicycle Friendly business, and we're very proud of it. And it really has helped us to come a long way. Next slide. So these are the bike shares. It really makes a very strong impression when people come and visit us. When we are having people being interviewed for a job, and when they see these bicycles out in front, that really gives them the whole idea that we're a sustainable company, that we really encourage people to lead an active life. It really makes a big positive impression on the people who come to. And we were even asked to go ahead and put up these bikes at a opening event for a building where we had the senators from U.S. Congress and U.S. representative, and they wanted us to show these bikes off to go ahead and say how Thermo Fisher Scientific was doing their bit to try to become a sustainable company, but to also encourage an active lifestyle. Next slide. So this is kind of the bulk of what we do. I had learned over time that as much as biking to work was really a wonderful thing to do, what people really wanted to do was to get out and to visit things. And so these are some of the things that we've done. We've been on the Great Allegheny Passes. There's a bicycle group that we hook up with on Wednesday night. We do some of these short trail. We go out to the Gettysburg Battlefield or Harper's Ferry. So, and then we even for 3 years, we went to New York City, did a 5-borough ride where they completely shut down the highways and do 40 miles and even participate in community ride like the Xmas Lights ride. So it's really about just making it fun, making it people want to get on their bike and looking for that adventure that they would have on that. Next slide. And so Bike to Work Day, definitely one of our biggest events. We will have people who, for half of our employees, they do have to commute to get to our site. And so what we do is we encourage them to go ahead and show up with the bike. And we actually have a box truck driver who will actually transport their bikes to the train station where we start, and also shuttle some of our staff. And then that way they can make a one-way bike trip from the train station, about 5 miles, to our work site. And for a lot of them, this is really the first time where they start to realize, oh, this isn't that bad riding to work. It's not as anxiety producing that people think it might be. But when you go ahead and do it as part of a group, that really makes a big difference. And then for some of them, they'll say, I think I'm going to do this more often, whether that's biking to work or biking after work. It really doesn't matter. It's really the whole game is just get them on a bike and just take advantage of the healthy exercise and to reduce the reliance on our cars. Next slide. And this is the event that we are a corporate sponsor. It's a wonderful event. If any of you'd like to do road cycling and you want to be out in the country and you want to see very low traffic, you are all invited to join us. This is a wonderful event that it can be held in, it says here August, but now it's being held in June. And we get about 600 riders showing up for it. We get people from DC, from Baltimore. They all come and join us for a nice day ride. And they got rides as small as 10 miles, as long as 100 miles. You decide what the distance that you're doing. And the funding goes to support the Boys and Girls Club and our local Rotary Club. And they do wonderful community events for Frederick. So we really appreciate the support for it. Next slide. This one is kind of rather unique at our site. We actually have an annual high wheel race every year in Frederick. And we're just now starting to do it every other year. We won't have one this year, but we'll have one next year. And I'm a high wheel rider and I like to race. And so this was just like right up my alley. And so we are a corporate sponsor at this event. And so we get a lot of public visibility and attention when we ride these high wheels around the thing. And I look at the high wheels like almost like an F1 formula car. Yeah, not a lot of people are going to be able to get on it and ride it, but it brings people out and it gets them to thinking, I should get on my bike. I would like to do something like that. And I do train people how to ride these high wheels. So if you're interested and you want to learn how to ride a high wheel, go ahead and contact me afterward and we'll set up a time or date where you can learn how to ride a high wheel for yourself. And then I think we have one more slide. Here we go. These adventure rides that we have, these are 3 or 4 days long, and these are just like an adventure of a lifetime. And for a lot of these people, they have never ridden that far, but we're averaging around like 30, 40 miles a day, which is very reasonable. Anybody who can ride on the bike for 2 or 3 hours and we take breaks. It's just a wonderful opportunity to get out, learn about the history, and get to make new friends. So this is really how we at the group really have fun and really able to encourage people to think about bringing cycling as a lifestyle choice that they can share with not just with a coworker, but also with their family and with the kids. So that's kind of where we come from. This is how we go ahead and target this. And I think our next stop here to do an open Q&A. Nikki?
Right. Thank you so much to our panel and to Commuter Choice Maryland for bringing all of these all-stars together. You know, you see what employers are doing around the state and knew that these are some supporters that, again, are going the extra mile. So we will invite everyone to come back on screen, our whole panel, so we can get into the question and answer. We've been answering some of them as we go, but there are really some great questions that we would like to answer live for everyone to hear. So the first question that we wanted to pose to our employers and employees was if you interact with locally elected officials to advocate for bike-friendly communities near your office. Have you worked with the local government at all when you are making these strides to support your employees?
I can go if you go ahead, Joe.
So, not as an employee, but as a private citizen, I've talked with people in the Howard County Transportation Office, along with my councilwoman, to establish alternate routes for bicycles so that we can avoid some of the more dangerous hilly and areas around. So short answer is yes.
You actually had her out.
Yeah, and we did a bike tour around our local area with her. So that was great.
Yeah, for us in Frederick, we really we did a letter to the newspaper, to the editor, and really encourage the Frederick County to consider getting a bike plan in place. And so we were representative of the type of technology companies that were in the area. And so we wanted to go ahead and speak out for our coworkers, and that led to the adoption of the bike plan that we're currently in work with. So yes, we definitely do reach out and work with the local government officials.
So great to hear from MDOT perspective and at the state, like that is what we want to see when there's participation in local planning efforts and local push for more facilities, it does actually trickle up. So we review local plans when we are even looking at a state road that goes through that community. So yeah, that's a great examples from you all. All right, I'm going to pick one from the chat that's more directed towards MDOT. So there was a question about allowing jurisdictions to lower speed limits to a lower speed and support of complete streets and what MDOT has done in that process. So at MDOT, we don't drive state legislation. We provide letters of information to lawmakers about the impacts of lower speeds, because again, we do know that faster speeds lead to more severe crashes. So we've generally tried to support those, but we've seen this legislation really come in at a county by county level. Montgomery County has pushed for a lot of legislation for their county that allows lower speeds. It allows for more speed enforcement as well. So I would advocate working with local elected officials for legislation you want to see. Yeah. We did support legislation that would allow lowering speed limits without up to 5 miles per hour without an extensive speed study, at least, so it can be done faster. Question for one of our panelists. For the Fisher bike share, were there any legal hoops you had to jump through to establish that program? Some employers are worried about insurance needs to protect those that take the bikes out.
That's a really good question. I'm the one who's probably best positioned to go ahead and answer that question. So I did talk with our company legal representative, and the way we approached it was these bicycles are considered to be company vehicles. As long as you were a employee and you rode these bicycles according to our guidelines, then do it. And I wrote up I drafted a guideline about you got to wear a helmet, you got to have some lighting on and everything. And I passed it to the legal, and they reviewed it. And they did, for their perspective, it was really about the insurance part of it. And they really wanted to make sure that we were not putting our employee at greater risk. So there are certain roads that they're not allowed to road on because it's very high traffic. But if they wanted to ride across the street to McDonald's or to Wendy's or something like that, they were welcome to go ahead and check out the bike to do that. But yes, we did have to work with our legal representative, but they were pretty on board. We didn't run into too many issues spelling it out for them.
All right. Picking another more MDOT focused one. Have we been reaching out to vehicle operators, drivers about best safety practices? And I will I'll ask the panelists as well if you do any like safety education in your commuting conversations. But from MDOT, we are the MVA, the Motor Vehicle Administration, falls under MDOT, and they have been working to update driver's education manuals to comply with complete streets. So having more information about things like biking and walking and how to interact with those modes. There had been a question about how a driver would interact with a bike if it's not a clear bike lane. And in Maryland, we do have a 3-foot passing law. So that is already in the driver's ed manual, but it's really just like passing another slow vehicle. that a driver needs to make sure there's adequate space to safely pass, and that responsibility is on the driver before overtaking another vehicle.
One of the things that we do in our neighborhood is we will actually reach out to Title I schools and we will put on a bike safety rodeo. So we will have volunteers that come and we will teach them about the rules of the road. And the idea is if we can encourage the kid to get on the bicycle, that encourages their family and mom and dad to get on the bicycle and to practice these rules. So that's one of the things that we do to go ahead and encourage bike safety. And like you, Meg, I'm also a league cycling instructor, so I do from time to time will hold Smart 101 classes for our staff.
Great. I realize oh, sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I have, not at this employer, but in the past, I have done a bike safety workshop and it was so well attended and people loved it. So I think it's a great thing employers can do. And typically you have someone on staff like you guys who can run it. It was an employee who ran it and it was a hit. So it's a great thing to do, I think.
I feel like it can count as some of the health benefits too. Like you can
Absolutely. You can double count it, right? Yeah.
Exactly. I realized there's a similar question about tips for specifically drivers when parking and getting out of a parked car. With that door zone issue, there's something they call the European reach or the Dutch reach. Like instead of just opening your car door with your hand that's right there to open up the door, you can do your other hand, and it requires you then to kind of look back and be like looking at what is coming. But generally, especially in the city, you should always look before opening those doors. And with pedestrians as well, it's, looking both ways at all times. Nikki, feel free to jump in if there's any, and the panelists, if there's any questions that really speak to you, we can jump around to any of them.
Yeah, I just saw one in the chat about guaranteed ride home and how that's calculated. And I just want to mention so that it is entirely free as long as you're within the parameters of the regions of Maryland that it covers. So it covers most parts of Maryland. It's just not the rural counties. So I can drop a link to the chat for everyone to see kind of the guidelines and parameters for that.
Nikki. In the chat also, we have had some good mentions of the AP/BP parking guide if you want to really learn more about bike parking. And then there was questions about bicycle parking at transit stops and what MDOT is doing there. And so do we have a statewide policy? Currently, we do not have a mobility transit hub policy as a whole. We do have, for the core MTA region, there is a bus stop design guide that kind of lays out the sorts of amenities for that area. And then WMATA has a pretty robust policy. I think there was something shared in the chat about their new bike lockers. But it is something we definitely have our eye on, both the mobility hubs, and someone mentioned charging for e-bikes. We've been in conversation with the Maryland Department of Energy that does issue grants for developers who are looking to add e-bike charging and e-vehicle charging to see about applying that to the public right of way. Here's an interesting one from Matthew is the interchangeability between commutes and trips, and how that's differentiated by us, and how panelists, you also do support once you change how a commute happens, probably other trips that people take. So we are using them somewhat interchangeably. Quite frankly, if a crash happens, it's of less concern of how it happened and more so that we want to have a safe roadway. But we do know commutes are some of the most regular trips that people take. They account for about 20% of trips that people make. You're going to go to work and come home most weekdays. And then, of course, there's other trips that are taken. And so because we know that is a type of trip people make, it's something that we can make a more targeted approach to, like Commuter Choice Maryland, working to support those trips, and encouraging, again, employers to make it more feasible for somebody to bike or take transit and supporting that multimodalism. But otherwise, we want to support all trips to be safe. We just know we can identify those and that we have the most information on those because of the census and the information they can collect about commutes. Have you guys, as panelists, seen any impacts or heard, even from your colleagues that once they maybe made a change on their commute, it also affected other trips that they take?
I'm going to ask my colleague Susan Meslovich, because she's a wonderful example of one of my staffer who discovered the joy of doing electric bike riding, and it really allowed her to do things that she could have not done before. So, Susan, if you want to get yourself online and just talk about what e-bike meant for you.
Yeah, so the great thing about the e-bike that opened it up for me is as I got older, my knees got bad and I had knee problems. So I went out and bought an e-bike and it kept me riding. It kept me doing bike to work. It kept me on the bike trails. It kept me going out. I don't have one of the moto bikes. I have a regular old e-bike, one that can ride on the C&O Canal. I was able to still go with the team and with the group at Thermo and do all of our biking events and made a big, huge difference. So if you're out there and you think you can't ride a bicycle because you're just getting older, your body doesn't feel the same on a bicycle, I would highly encourage you to go out and look in a bike store at an e-bike because they're going to fit you, they're going to get the right bike for you, and they're going to keep you riding. So big deal to me, and it kept me on my bike. Now my knees are better, hoping to get on my road bike again this year. But yeah, my e-bike really helped me over a hump. So there you go.
For sharing that, Susan. It's so true that people who used to be really active bike commuters, we're seeing a lot of switch over into the e-bikes and allowing you to keep up that lifestyle. It's not just young folks or delivery drivers. It's really allowing adults as well to make longer trips on bikes and to keep biking, and even once you may encounter a health issue. So that's a great to hear. All right. Let's see. Somebody said, please address the fact that as a nation, we have switched from smaller sedans to bigger SUVs and trucks, and the number of bicyclist and pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries has been increasing as a result of collision with these bigger vehicles. That is incredibly true and a very good point to bring up. If you want to know more about that, I encourage you to look at the NACTO, the National Association of City Transportation Officials, wrote a really good letter to USDOT about introducing a pedestrian safety standard to the safety standards cars are given. Because the standards cars are given are really, right now in the US, focused only on the occupant protection, when we know the size of the vehicle does affect people outside of the vehicle as well. So there has been a push to create that standard as a way to let people who are buying a big SUV know this is going to be dangerous to, the kid in your neighborhood that you might not be able to see as easily if you have a really high hood. And it's more dangerous when you're in a parking lot in these giant vehicles to safely interact with people walking and biking. So thank you for bringing that up. I want to have some for our panelists as well. There was a question, though, about city planning, and I guess I'm interested to hear from the other bikers as well. Is it better to have a few main bicycle-friendly roads that have better infrastructure, or to try to convert all roads to be bicycle roads with perhaps less infrastructure?
I can speak only for myself, having done 15 years worth of bike commuting to work back and forth. For me, the biggest one is always about traffic stress. Is it low traffic and is the speed low? And that's what I really look for. So even though, and I've seen it, we do have bike lanes at some place, but some people won't take it because the cars are going at a rapid rate, 45 versus a 25 zone. So
Yep.
I know people just as soon ride and take the lane at 25 mile per hour because that's a less stressful route than to take a route that has a bike lane next to a
Mm.
speeding traffic.
Sorry, guys, I realize we're just about at time. I do agree with that, though. It's getting people over the large obstacles with safe infrastructure is going to be the best investment, and not spending too much on roads that are already low stress. If we didn't get to your question, we have this email address on the screen, completestreets@mdot.maryland.gov, where you can submit your question and we can give you a written answer as well. We invite you to give us feedback about today's webinar. If you scan the QR code, you can tell us future topics you'd like to hear, or get connected to speakers, and subscribe to our listserv. We have a bunch of events coming up. You've heard about Bike Month and our next webinar. We will have e-blasts in June and July. August, we will touch on back to school. And in September, Commuter Choice Maryland is going to host a webinar about the Maryland 295 corridor pilots. We thank you all for joining us today.
And thank you and your team, Meg. We appreciated the opportunity to join you today.
Thank you.
Thank you all.